Yo, what up, everybody? I'm Jay the Kid, and as y'all know, this is another episode of Four Ropes for a Podcast, but this is a one-on-one segment. So today, if you guys have been paying attention to our socials and everything, we did have to take off our original poster and everything, but we do have a new one coming up, so y'all let's see that as soon as y'all see this video. So without further ado, I want to introduce our very special guest. For the first time ever, we have a lady on the show, and we have Mrs. Stormie Hale. How you doing today?
Good. How's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good. So I want to get into the main stuff about your wrestling career starting out and everything. You've had a few matches out there in Canada and everything, and we're so close with maritime wrestling out there in Canada. Getting the chance to interview guys like Logan Green, AWOL with Brian Devarro, and everybody. Like, what made you feel like this was the right time to start your wrestling career? And what impact do those guys who you've seen and possibly trained with, how did that make you more comfortable with it as well?
Yeah, those are great questions. The timing couldn't have been better, really. I grew up as a competitive gymnast, and I always looked for something kind of physical to keep me in shape and stuff. And so when this was introduced to me as an option, I jumped right on board. I trained for a full year and then had to take some time off, and then I've been back now training for another almost full year before I had my first official match. So there was quite a bit of history. I started off as a valet, and you mentioned Logan Green. I'm currently his manager right now on the Capital City Wrestling Show. So
Mhm.
the guys definitely have a huge influence on my character, and I also manage Matt Chevron, and he influences a lot of my moves in the ring because we train together. And Logan Green influences a lot of my character development and personality because we get along really, really well. So.
Okay. Um, Let me ask you about how when you came up with your ring gear and your character work and everything like that, what was the few things that you found were kind of difficult with like setting that up, or if there were any challenges at all?
I wanted to be a little bit different as far as the colors that I chose. I'm really a big fan of black leather. That's what I would have gone with if I just went with my favorite thing, but I found a lot of people do that, both in inside and outside WWE and in the indie scene. Um, so I always have the black leather as a backup, but I went for kind of the bright orange and blue because I just love that orange color, and I found the blue goes along with it. I did some research. I didn't see anybody wearing those colors. And so it may look at first appearance like something that a good guy would wear, but as a bad guy, I kind of own those colors, and I just went with it.
Okay, understandable. Um, so getting into another part of the business of wrestling and everything, what do you feel is something that you having a few matches under your belt and everything? What do you feel is the main component of like learning, like when you're training to go out there and everything?
For me, the moves kind of come naturally. I love that side of it. I love training, and I can do a move it comes to me pretty naturally. So for me, the hard part is like putting it all together, making sure that it flows and that I make the right answering move to someone else's move to make sure that you just don't look like you don't know how to fight or anything like that. Like, it's really hard
Okay.
to know what to do in the right moment. That's the like having that reaction, the proper reaction in those moments, and learning how to fight. That was the hard part for me.
Okay. And also joining us in right now, we have our boy Visionary 23. So,
Hi.
Visionary, you got any questions for Stormy? We just been going off, just answering a few to get started.
Yeah, what got you into professional wrestling?
Sorry.
What got you into professional wrestling?
Um, It was somebody that used to be in my life. They were training with Jason Boa. I don't know if you heard of him, but
Hmm.
so we just talked to Jason and said, "Hey, like, where are you training? Can we come join you?" And we did, and
Hmm.
then started training from there. And like I mentioned, I trained for about a year, and then I took some time off, and then went back. And I went really, really hard when I went back, and that's what got me to my first match.
That's dope.
Okay, okay. Hmm. So getting on into a little bit more about you and everything, I want to ask you who is your Mount Rushmore for women independent wrestlers in the scene, and then who's your Mount Rushmore of the women like mainstream, like if you want to say, I guess WWE, TNA, AW, like in that aspect.
Sure, I'll do my best. So for indie wrestlers, it's more of like a shout out, I guess, rather than the Mount Rushmore thing. So I'll like give my shout out. Bia Moss, like I haven't wrestled her yet, but I can't wait. We've become kind of friends and have worked together in the ring, and so having a match with her would be one of my interests, upcoming interests. A shout out to uh, she changed her name recently since I used to work with her, but Nishoba Naira, I think she's in Maine or in the States. She was the first female wrestler on the indie scene that I trained with, so I just a shout out to her. I'd love to have a match with her someday. Um, Salem Wilder obviously gave me my first match, so a shout out to her.
Mhm.
I guess that's three Mount Rushmore out of four, but
Hey, I mean, we'll
for
take it.
okay, for WWE, I kind of, not to compare myself to anybody in WWE because that would be just silly, but my character development like streams somewhere from between Liv Morgan and Chelsea Green. So I like to think that I have kind of the attitude or the meanness of Liv Morgan mixed with the self-centered confidence of Chelsea Green. So I guess those two would be on there, and then Charlotte Flair for moveset, 100%. Uh, and Becky Lynch is actually my favorite WWE wrestler, so that would be my four.
No, that's a good list. That's a
Okay.
good list. And the thing about that, when you say like, not comparing yourself to certain wrestlers and everything, usually like when we had this, like have people rank their lists and stuff like that, like I always wonder like what styles of like people like usually get their like certain mindset when going into the ring, their character work and everything. And those are two pretty good names, honestly. I'm gonna be real. I'm never gonna say I was completely on the Liv Morgan train and everything, but the last 2 to 3 years of her heel work and everything, like she's proved that she's a standalone star. Like like she could prove, like she's proven that to a lot of people. So being able to say like putting Liv Morgan in that category in 2025 is one of the situations where I wouldn't say I 3 years ago I would have said that that is accurate and that's a fair thing to say, but understandable. And then Chelsea Green is just gonna be Chelsea Green. I just she always has some type of entertainment quality. Like she can be serious, she can get down and dirty, like she can wrestle with the men sometimes, honestly, So just showing like
Yeah,
basically I consider her like a workhorse in women's professional wrestling. So that's a good person to, characterize yourself around and everything, because I mean
I
she's
watched
been through
an
a lot.
interview with her once, and she was talking about how she can develop her character and be the bad guy without ever insulting her opponent. And I just thought that was super admirable, and I really hope that I can. It's not an easy thing to do, right? Like most bad guys in wrestling, they put down their opponents. They use that as their weapon to make them look like, a heel or a bad guy. And I don't think that you need to do that. So someone else who's really really good at that is Logan Green. He just makes fun of himself, and it's good enough. You don't need to be putting down everybody else in the business to make yourself stand out.
Right. I can respect that. I commend that. Visionary. You got one more?
Yeah. What company do you see yourself in 10 years from now?
Uh, I guess you'd have to ask me that question again once I've had maybe a few more matches under my belt. But for right
Hmm.
now, I'm just excited to debut in my home company. Right now, I'm still a valet in my home company in Capital City Wrestling. So that's really just the only prize that I have in my eye, and I want to make it big there. First and foremost, I have a lot of loyalty to my home company, and
Hmm.
so the Capital City wrestling scene is where I want to be for at least the next few years. After that, we'll have to just see how it goes.
That's a good answer.
Which is true. I mean, you got to respect that. A lot of people, definitely have a little bit more support in the maritime wrestling community and everything. Like Santana being a guy who's done it for so many years already, being a vet in the locker room and everything. Although, I mean, him and Logan Green kind of don't see eye to eye, but how do you feel with having Fantana in that locker room, being a guy that has so much experience going all over, but also with Capital City Wrestling and everything? Like, what is those moments like when training and learning from him?
I love his high flying abilities. I do want to be a high flyer. Um, so I definitely listen and watch when he's talking and performing. That being said, just recently I was in a match. I was managing Matt Chevron, and I was his valet, obviously. And so I had it out with Fantana there in a match, and I may have interrupted his some of his high flying moves, so he may not be too pleased with me right now. But still, I admire his move set, and and Matt Chevron went toe to toe with him in that match as well. So I love that high flying uh, style, and I hope to get there.
Okay, okay. And now, actually, we are going to get into one of our first segments of the show and everything. And that's actually going to be a visionary debate. So, visionary, one thing that we're going to debate on today is we are going to talk about the aspect of independent wrestling as total. I'm going to defend why the independent wrestling scene should have a little bit more focus going into 2025 because of the WWE ID information. And you're going to defend why independent wrestling is great where it's at and why it's going to keep improving without needing the recognition that it needs right now.
Okay.
All right. And then I'm going to go first. But I ain't going to use this full 5 minutes. So, reason why I think that like guys like WWE and all these other places should look at what they would feel like is small market independent scenes and stuff like that is because so much stuff has happened into wrestling to where we saw IPW Game On, I believe, where it was Trey McGill, I think, TJ McGill versus Demonic. That was such a good match, honestly. Like I think that right then and there, Demonic being a good friend of the show and everything, hearing his story, like he's like I enjoyed looking at that match and just going back and just looking at everything else that went place during that because it was some good ass wrestling moments. And I love being able to say, oh, okay, hey, this type of stuff that we should get on television, even if it's a local television thing. Oh well, like then you can stream the pay-per-views online and stuff like that, like they do with Twitch. Um, other places have been putting up good shows like Capital City Wrestling. We got a chance to look at a few good matches from them. IHW had a great wrestling show, I think not too long ago, still itself. I don't remember who wrestled in that one, but I remember, seeing the posters and advertisements for that. Professional wrestling in the independent scene is getting so much better to the point where now it's going mainstream just because people are sharing it online. Like this is the type of stuff that people are going to want to end up seeing. Like, of course, we got the WWE. Of course, we got our Rhea Ripley's, our Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, the CM Punks, Tiffany Stratton's, like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like we're going to need to see more stars and everything. And as much as I don't talk about AEW, I give them full credit for being able to use Ring of Honor and like they dark matches and these little small house shows that they're doing because they showing us certain stars. Like we don't always get a John Moxley and a Kenny Omega match on these dark matches and these other like events that they doing. And then Ring of Honor is just mainly a few independent guys as well as a few guys who made their name in Ring of Honor. I enjoy being able to see that type of wrestling, to see who's making their name from the ground up. I hate seeing guys that are already well polished and everything else like that. Not saying it doesn't mean that it's going to lessen the product or just make it only like make it feel like only top guys can get up there, because Evolve with WWE, I mean, it's getting some traction. Those Evolve guys was on NXT. And usually underneath a Vince McMahon era, that'd be the coldest day in hell before you see somebody from the development get a chance to come up on normal TV and actually put up a good match. And they did put up a good match against Javon Evan and I think Dragon Lee was in that match, and I forgot who else was. But it was a good match all in all. I think the independent scene needs a little bit more respect and a little bit more showtime, airtime, whether it's local or not. Like it needs to be something to where everybody gets a chance to see this type of stuff on their TV normally. Now I know that it's a lot of money with going in that and everything, but I mean, people who see the independent wrestling scene in certain cities and countries need to know, like, hey, okay, like we can sponsor this, like we could do what we can to try to put certain things on the map. And when that happens and everything, it's gonna be places to where it's like you have no choice but to actually notice these guys, or when they finally become mainstream and become those guys that you want to look for now, they're going to be like Stormie said, she's going to be loyal to where she came from. She's not going to be like trying to go to be main star now in WWE when she built it up beforehand and nobody really noticed it until they decided to put it on TV and social media trying to basically make her a trailblazer. That's how I feel about it though. I'm going to give my minute up there. Visionary, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I feel like the independent scene, it takes time to build from there, you know. Like WWE wasn't that big at first, AEW wasn't that big at first, and all the other big companies. It takes time, you know, to build. So I feel like all like the independent companies, especially with social media, you could take that as an advantage to, you know, build your company up and build your stars. Because you gotta start from somewhere. So that's how I honestly feel about that.
Boy, you was quick on that. I respect it. I respect it. So,
Yeah.
all right, Stormy. And is there anything that you want to add on to any side of this debate that you felt that could be said?
I do think it would be really cool if more local channels gave that opportunity to their own local indie companies, right? Like, if our Bell TV here in New Brunswick was to reach out and offer to do that and show a TV show, and find some funding, I think it'd be amazing to see it, right? And more people might watch it. Like our home company, Capital City Wrestling, it really is becoming for such a general audience. Like it really is family friendly. It really is like blowing up in the mainstream population, like you say. It's not just niche markets, and it's not just people that have been fans of wrestling their whole lives. It's people that are brand new to it. Some of my friends who never watched it before are getting right into it because it makes sense, right? It's the oldest form of storytelling that there is, and I think that if it was shared to a greater audience, you'd have even more feedback. And I think that's happening kind of with the Netflix era as well. Just more people getting interested in it. And if local channels could give that opportunity to indie wrestling, I think it'd be a good thing.
Okay, okay, okay. Well, now we gonna switch gears and everything because we do got limited time and everything. But I want to ask you about, what do you feel are wrestling moves that you are training for, but also want to put in your arsenal, but you don't fully know about? You don't have to give us any that you got that you want to bring out yet. I want to be surprised if we get a chance to actually get a chance to see you wrestle. But what are some that you might not, some that you think are cool, but you feel like might not be the repertoire that you're looking for?
Yeah, I will say that, like I mentioned, I grew up a competitive gymnast, and I'm not super young to be starting professional wrestling. I'll just throw that out there. But I did recently discover that I can still do some of the things that I did as a kid when I was a competitive gymnast, and I haven't tried them in over like 10 years, and I was given the confidence by our training group and everything to try those. So I'm really excited to bring those into my fighting arsenal and figure out how those gymnastics can be applied on like a fight level, right? Because we're not just out there to show off; we're actually trying to win a fight. So learning how to change those and bring them in and not just look fancy, but actually be able to use them in a fight is really exciting. So without giving too much away, that's what I'm working on. I'm working on like learning to jump way higher than I ever have in my life to be able to improve my kicks and just have that leg strength and ability and mobility to apply all those things that I want to do. Because sometimes it looks a lot more exciting in your head than when you see it back on camera. So there's lots to work on.
Okay, okay. Visionary, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah. What was your favorite generation of wrestling for like the women?
I actually, yeah, I didn't start watching wrestling until about 2007, unfortunately. I know it was in my household. I grew up with my family watching it, but I don't remember ever paying attention to it uh, until around 2007,
Hmm.
2008. So like the John Cena and Randy Orton generation. Randy Orton's my favorite wrestler.
Oh, that's
Has
nice.
been since the day I started watching and still is today.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I guess honestly, like right now is my favorite generation because I'm now a wrestler and I can relate to them, and it's like watching a whole different thing, right? Now that I can do the moves and I know what the moves are and how they're putting it together. So right now is my favorite.
Guys, so we're gonna have a lot of editing going on in this video and everything. So y'all be on the lookout for that. Visionary, did you finish up with your final question?
No.
All right, go ahead.
What goal do you have outside of wrestling?
Sorry,
What goals do you have outside of wrestling?
outside of wrestling, I've already pretty much gone pretty far in my career. I am a scientist,
Oh
so I have
wow.
a master's degree, and I work from home, but I love my job, so I'm pretty happy with that. Um,
Hmm.
I have a 16-year-old kid, so he's pretty much grown up. So I kind of made that goal. So what's next? I don't know. I'm working on my home, so maybe just continue to build my home and maybe really wrestling is the newest thing for me, and it's the goal that I have. So outside of that, just maintaining health, continuing to grow as a person and uh and yeah, keep growing my career and my household.
Okay.
Okay, okay. I respect that. I respect that. I like these answers and everything. We are gonna get started, and we are gonna start 5 minute wrestling rants. So 5 minute wrestling rants are basically we're gonna ask you a few questions within the 5 minute time range. We want you to be as honest as possible. Basically, most of these questions are gonna see if we like you as a wrestler, if we like you as a person, honestly. Because one thing we do love here and everything like that is we love to ask the norms of the wrestling questions as well as the could if we were able to actually hang out with you guys would we have a good time. So without that being said,
Yeah.
let's put 5 minutes on. If you would rather have to do one of these two moves, would you rather take a super kick, no protection, or a spine buster? Which one do you take?
Uh, spine buster. I feel like
Hmm.
my back can handle quite a lot, whereas getting kicked in the face is not a lot of fun. So,
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough. I give you that. Visionary.
What's your favorite women's title design?
sorry,
What was your favorite women's championship design?
sorry, I can't understand. I don't know if
I
it's
know.
echo or.
So basically, he asks in what is like one of your favorite women's title designs that you've seen
Oh,
in
okay.
wrestling.
I don't know if I could answer that. I can't really picture them.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Sorry.
we do a like title list thing and everything like that. So we're gonna have to definitely invite you back in so we can see where your
Yeah,
ranking
for
is on
sure.
certain on these
Now I'll know
sports.
what to pay attention for next time.
See, okay, okay, okay. Um, in what era of wrestling do you feel like if you could go back in time and be a part of, what would you be a part of? In which era, which division, which company? Like what era of wrestling mainstream wise?
My trainer had me go back and watch a bunch of like Gail Kim and Awesome Kong from TNA wrestling, and there's quite a few women in there that I could relate to, so that would probably be my answer for that.
Okay, okay. Visionary, you with the next one?
What was your favorite match you watched recently?
Uh, I guess just honestly, Randy and John Cena. I thought that was really cool to see. I want to see Randy win the title again, so it got my hopes
Yeah.
up for like 5 seconds. Yeah. I mean, I kind of knew it wasn't going to happen, but
You never
it
know.
got my hopes up for a minute.
Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. Hmm. What would you say is the four best things that you've learned from training with wrestling? Whether it was that first year that you did it and then took a little break, or this recent time or everything. What would you say are 3 to 4 factors of training to be a wrestler and on the woman aspect of it that you've understand or what you've had to learn?
Yeah, learning to bring aggression in was was one of the what I thought would be really easy for me, but it was actually like super challenging. And when it finally hit, and I learned how to really draw from things in my past or things that made me mad, and I really learned how to, harness that aggression and use it in the ring in a pro wrestling match. That was one of the coolest things I learned. Of course, I love doing spots and building move sets. That comes naturally to me though, so it's super important, super fun, but not as difficult. And some of the simple things, chain wrestling. A lot of women in Ontario and stuff don't do chain wrestling, and we do, and I love it
Hmm.
now. Like it took a bit to get used to it, but now I can really move around, and there's other women I can work with, and so chain wrestling has been really really cool to learn.
Okay, okay. Visionary, you got another one?
Would you rather compete in a ladder match or a Hell in a Cell match?
uh, Probably Hell in a Cell. Like I'm so afraid of getting pinched by a ladder. It's not the
Hmm.
heights that would bother me, but I feel like with Hell in a Cell, at least you can still do heights. You can climb on top of the boxes and the cage and whatnot. But I feel like there's less of a chance of objects getting wrapped around you and actually pinching you or cutting you open.
Yeah.
Nah, okay, okay, I can respect that. And with the last 23 seconds left, we usually do this thing to where we ask the burning question. Now, a little bit of it was asked with Visionary's final question, but we gonna add a little bit extra onto there. So when you're all done with your wrestling career and everything, after you have all your championship matches, all of your accolades and everything that you want to set up for yourself in the future, when all of that is pushed to the side and you now continue this new life with your career outside of wrestling. You having your degree and everything like that. Do you feel like you would use that more into your future when you're done with wrestling? Or do you feel like your love that do you feel like you would end up having another love and appreciation for wrestling to where you would want to teach in a maritime area as well?
So that's a really good question, and without getting myself in trouble at work, I've always gravitated toward event planning. That's what I used to do in my past, and so I help our promoter now, like with setting up the show and doing a lot of the production side of things. So I would definitely love to stay involved in wrestling as far as the live shows and the production side. Would I like to be a
Mhm.
trainer? Absolutely. It's a great idea. And so, do I imagine that when I'm done wrestling, that I would still remain in the wrestling scene 100% in whatever capacity I could?
Okay, okay. We got to give you a round of applause for that because this was one of our first ever, again, first ever woman's interview on to our podcast and everything. And you coming by giving us an aspect of basically, what it sounds like is rookie year, is what I call it. Just because I said the same thing to Demonic and everything, we would definitely love to have you back in at the, like you said, you get a few other more matches underneath your belt and everything, because we want to do a thing now with our wrestler friends, especially out in the Maritime. We want to do a lot. We want to just do a sit down and watch of certain matches that you had. So we'll have you pick out a set of matches for us and everything, and we just watch them together and get your opinions on exactly how the match came to be, how certain moves and spots were carried, the difficulty in most parts of the match, and just all of that type of stuff. So we definitely would love to have you back on the podcast for that. Awesome,
Cool.
awesome.
Sounds good.
So yeah, definitely, definitely. But without further being said, as y'all already know, I'm Jada Kid. We got our boy right over here. We have Visionary 23. And ladies and gentlemen, one more time, we just want to give a very special thank you to our one and only friend, Stormie Hale. Without further being said as well, one thing that we always do before we get up out of here, we like to thank our audience and say, thank you for wrestling. And we out. Peace.